Hey, Greg,
right,
seriously, mate, how the hell... First of all, you came to this country, was it 1991?
Yeah. So I left South Africa in 86. I worked for National Mutual. And they said to me, we're selling out of South Africa because we're having problems with the unions in Australia. Do you want to be made redundant in Cape Town or transferred to Melbourne? And so that was one of the things I agonized over and even felt a sense of abdication because I'd said to friends, I'll fight the liberation struggle till the bitter end here in South Africa. But so I then spent 5 years in Melbourne, and Australia will always be special because Australia is the place where, for the first time in my life, I could buy a house anywhere and my kids could go to any school. I didn't have to ask in the restaurants if I was allowed in or where's the coloured area for me to go to, etc. So Australia has a special place. And then I was transferred to New Zealand in 91 as the managing director of National Mutual's corporate subsidiary here and was told to get it ready for sale, which we didn't sell out in the end, and I stayed with him for 10 years.
Okay.
I'm sort of deep down a capitalist with a conscience, but New Zealanders got to know me as the Race Relations Commissioner.
Now, was it a commissioner or conciliator? I've never quite worked out what it was.
Yep, both. So before 31st of December 2001, we had a separate office for the Race Relations Conciliator, and we had a separate Human Rights Commission. So
right.
I was given one role, which was to merge the Race Relations Office with the Human Rights Commission. And so on the 1st of January 2002, I became Race Relations Commissioner.
Right.
Where previously I was conciliator.
Listen, mate, I mean, the thing that always struck me, please, I'm sure you won't mind me saying this, is it seemed odd that somebody who'd come to our country in 1991 from a different country got appointed 10 years later, no matter how brilliant you might be, to the role of Race Relations Conciliator / Commissioner. How did that happen?
I was actually in Rwanda at the time, talking to the Rwanda government, or I was part of a bilateral discussion in South Africa with Rwanda based on the genocide that happened there. And I challenged their Minister of Justice in saying that he was carrying on about how many architects of the genocide they'd executed, and they would continue to do so. And I said to him, well, if they kill you and you continue to kill them, you will forever just be the Minister of Justice for the Tutsis and not the Minister of Justice for Rwanda. And he said, easy for you to speak because you let the architects of apartheid away with impunity, but why don't you come and walk the genocide sites of Rwanda? And we're having a conference on reconciliation. So I went and walked the genocide sites of Rwanda and again challenged them about that they have to become not just a Tutsi government, but a government for the whole of Rwanda. When I got a call saying, look, we have a short-term contract. We want to merge the Human Rights Commission with the Race Relations Office. And I said, I don't know much about race relations. And I was told, well, there isn't really a school for race relations if you look at all the previous people we've appointed, but we wanted business skills to merge the two offices. And so that's how I became Race Relations Commissioner.
Right, okay. You were appointed by Helen Clark. Was it was it a personal appointment or was it a public sector appointment? What I mean by that is that it was...
so there was a warrant and it was Minister of Justice who I reported to. Yeah.
Right, okay. And you did that role for, 5 years, I think, Gregory, is that right?
No, just for 2 years I did that because, as I said, I had one writing instruction and that was to merge the two offices. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Isn't it interesting? All right, you were a colourful character. What's your ethnic background yourself?
So on both my mum and my dad's side, there's Dutch. So in Paarl, where I grew up, Paarl was made famous by the New Zealand cricketers, where Stephen Fleming and Dion Nash and Matthew Hart smoked dope and got suspended. So the stuff was freely available in my hometown of Paarl. So the Dutch settlers came and the French Huguenots. So
it was probably the French that brought the drugs, to be fair. The Dutch weren't much into fun, were they?
No. The Dutch only came to the Cape to set up a settlement so that they were travelling from Holland, have refreshments, and then go on to India, where it was your great British colony that actually came to colonize us. Yeah. So the Dutch were, and on my mother's side, Woodendal is again Dutch and German, but they married. Because I've been very heavily into my heritage, and I'm getting to the 1700s, and most of my forefathers there they called them bastards or bastardin Hottentot. So they were from the Khoisan, the Dutch married them, and there's about 8 million people who've been classified as coloured, or the Minister of Coloured Affairs said in 1948 we were the consequences of the sins of the fathers. But it was
I didn't realise that. So so it was perfectly okay to marry you in the 17th century and to have that sort of intimate relationship, but by by the 1970s you were considered some sort of dirty stain upon.
So the turn of the sort of 1899, there was the Boer War. Again, remember the Dutch settled, and the Dutch sort of were in Cape Town, and the Dutch were chased out of Cape Town by the
Great
Brits,
Trek.
who then they took the coastal areas, and the Dutch took the Transvaal, sort of Johannesburg and Pretoria, and the Dutch had the Free State. So the war was again fought in the late 1899 till 1902 between the Dutch and the Brits. And the Brits won the war, which then made South Africa a union of South Africa under British rule. And the Dutch said, you can beat us over a barrel of a gun, but we will beat you at the ballot box, and gave instructions that they should have 10, 15 children each. And eventually in 1948, the Dutch came to power and brought the apartheid laws in. But the Brits also had apartheid laws. So it wasn't just the Dutch, it was the Brits as well. Yeah.
Okay. So we all know what happened next. And then New Zealand gets involved because of our sporting contacts. I think the first time there's a realisation that there's a problem was the 1960 tour of South Africa.
When we didn't want Maoris to come.
Correct, and the New Zealand Rugby Union, to its shame, said no, that was fine. By
they were compliant,
but by 1967, the New Zealand Rugby Union changed its mind, so had the country as a general rule and said no Maoris, no tour, and that particular tour of South Africa was cancelled in 1967. That team went to Britain instead. Now, so we all know what happened after that. We had the Springbok tour. Eventually, apartheid crumbles. Nelson Mandela.
Then in the 70s, they then said Maoris could come and be honorary whites,
that's right.
For the duration of the tour.
Yes, that's right.
So then New Zealand restarted the tours, because Maoris were allowed.
That's right.
But when they got there, they were honorary whites.
But we still had to contend with South African referees. So really, nothing had improved, to be fair.
But absolutely.
But so everything turns out okay. Nelson Mandela gets in. We're going to flash forward to 1995. Promise hope, stuff like that. Can I just ask, what's gone wrong? Why is South Africa now a cot case, Gregory? Why, when I read the Economist magazine did a recent, or you'll be aware of it, front page story on the state of South Africa. The World Bank has declared it the most unequal country in the world. People, if people could leave, they would. black and white, one would presume, and everybody in between. What's gone wrong with South Africa in the last 30 years?
Yeah, so also just that the most unequal is based on salary distributions, and so 7% of the wealth of the population still hold most of the wealth in South Africa. Because in 94, there was one person, one vote, or political freedom, but there was no economic freedom because the people who had annexed the land, people who had taken stuff from indigenous people. I mean, every time I go back to South Africa, I go to where my granny had a small holding, which was declared a white area in 1967, and I go take a photo in front of the house that my father built, and where I grew up, but was confiscated from us in 1969 when it was declared a white area. So there wasn't a redistribution of wealth, which is one of the issues with how the World Bank is saying who's the most unequal. But I don't want to use that to justify the extreme disappointment that has happened over the last 25 years.